Identity Lifecycle Scenario 2A. AIMS can read data from the HR data source. The HR data can be read directly by providing AIMS with read access to the HR tables or read access to a logical view of the HR data. AIMS can also act on data extracted from the HR system by customer-written procedures and uploading that data to Microsoft SQL or Oracle database tables. The HR data contains information that is needed to provision new users, terminate existing users, and change account properties for existing users. Typical HR data such as the user's first name, middle name, and last names, employee number and ID, as well as address and location information, phone numbers, manager, and custom attributes can all be used to determine the provisioning role for new users, as well as lookup methods for other actions. There are multiple HR feed actions that AIMS handles, such as provisioning new users, termination of existing users, leaves of absence, layoffs, promotions and transfers, and property pushes. Each action type has its own cycle in processing the HR data. AIMS does not keep its own identity store. Instead, it provisions new accounts to what Avatir calls the authoritative source. The authoritative source is the LDAP directory that contains the user's account that will act as the hub to tie all other secondary system accounts a user may have together. In our examples, Active Directory is the authoritative LDAP store. AIMS uses the following to determine if a new user has to be provisioned. First, AIMS requires a transaction timestamp in the data feed. AIMS stores the last time a particular feed operation ran and compares it to the timestamp of the records coming in. If a record was added to the data since the last time AIMS pulled that data, the record is a candidate for selection. Next, AIMS looks for a field that represents the transaction type of the action we are dealing with. In this example, the literal new means we have a new hire. Next, AIMS reads the HR data for up to 6 fields that will comprise the role name that this user will be provisioned to. In our example, this is simplified to be a concatenation of department and job title. AIMS looks in its business service repository to verify a role with that name exists. For example, assume the department is IT and the title is Role 1. AIMS will look in Identity Enforcer to see if there is an IT-Role 1 role. If it exists, AIMS will begin the provisioning request to submit the item to workflow and obtain the proper approvals. Data is then mapped between the HR feed and AIMS so that AIMS constructs the request to update the appropriate attributes in the authoritative source account it is being asked to create. Additionally, when items such as manager's employee number are passed as part of the data, AIMS will perform a lookup of that employee number and return the distinguished name of the manager to be used in building the manager's subordinate relationship in the LDAP directory. AIMS has built-in checks and balances to make sure the employee number or employee ID cannot be duplicated in the domain, or if desired, not duplicated to any other domain in the forest. For other transactions such as termination, AIMS applies the same logic. Check the timestamp of the record to make sure we have not already processed it, determine if a match exists for the transaction type we are performing, then select the authoritative source account by any of the following mechanisms: employee ID, employee number, email address, first, middle, and last name, or logon ID. Using employee ID or number is the most efficient, as we can easily act on the same employee ID across the domain and forest. The user may have multiple accounts that all reflect the same unique identifier. The termination action is then defined to determine the final disposition of the account. This method works well for employees who are processed through an HR system. However, managers typically have to hire provisional workers such as contractors and interns that are not processed through the HR system. In this instance, a manager can use the Identity Enforcer client to request a contractor account be created for the same role that would be created for an employee processed through the HR system. The select managed user function is configurable to display the employee number attribute for all employees and contractors. By typing the desired employee number, you can see if a number exists for the user you wish to create. Select the role, in this example IT Role 1, from the list of available roles and place it into the shopping cart. Choose the New Account radio button and then click on the New Account link. Fill in the required information such as name, employee ID, employee type, and the initial password that will be used for all accounts. Note that the auto-naming rules are applied to generate user IDs in accordance with your company's naming standards. Additional attributes can be specified, such as the contractor's manager. This way, the manager-subordinate relationship can be easily populated into the authoritative LDAP directory. When completed, just click the Continue button. An account exists check is done to make sure that the account names are unique for each system that you wish to create accounts on. If the account name was already in use, auto increment rules would apply to provision this contractor correctly. Once the form data is completed, simply select the Submit Request button to put the request off into workflow. The privilege that creates the authoritative source account for a contractor can be restricted to have a maximum expiration age configurable to the needs of your organization. This means that the user that was provisioned using the maximum account expiration, which was Bob Johnson, is set to expire 90 days from today, which would be February 18, 2016. To change the account expiration, use the Identity Enforcer client to select the user to manage, then select User Request and click on the Change Account Expiration. You can set the account to expire now, the number of days or hours before the account is set to expire, the date and time to expire the account, or set the account back to never expire.